Hello, I'm heading up to the conservation studio today to talk to Christina Mandy about one of her ongoing conservation projects. So this is the way. It's a little bit noisy. Hi Christina.
Hi Laura.
How are you?
Yeah, come on in. I'll just lift the painting a bit back.
Great. So many of you will remember Christina from the previous video that she did, maybe halfway through the treatment of this painting. Christina Mandy, she's the assistant conservator of paintings here at the gallery.
Actually, sorry, no, you're fine. My title's just changed.
Complimenti, what's your title now?
Grazie. It is conservator.
Yay,
Perfect.
she's been promoted. Can I say that on video?
Sorry.
Recently. So how did you feel when you were told that you would be working on this project?
I think it was a mix between really excited and also a bit daunted because it is such an important painting. We have so few examples of paintings from this period, especially in relatively good condition.
In this country.
Exactly. Yeah. So I really saw it as a challenge to learn a lot more about this style of painting, but also the materials and how they behave as well. Maybe you might remember from the last video that the decision was made to remove the regilding from the 19th century on the frame, and that was regilding that had been done in a very unsympathetic way. It was really solid, looked like sticking a modern frame onto a really beautiful old painting. So we had this external frame and gilding specialist come in and work on the frame, and with his expertise he was able to restore the frame in such a way that it's now much more sympathetic, much more in keeping with the rest of the painting.
Yeah, and one of the effects I think that has now been achieved is that the frame is no longer the first thing you see. It's not this kind of slightly glaring eyesore. You really keep your focus on the part of the painting that should be focused on. It's a painting that actually has the accolade of being the oldest painting in our collection. It is signed by the artist Margarito d'Arezzo. So we should probably take a step back and just think briefly about the actual imagery and what we're looking at. And what we have here is the Virgin enthroned. She's enclosed to this wonderful mandola, and she has the Christ child on her lap. And she's surrounded by 8 scenes. Each one relates to an episode from the life of a different saint. Only this one actually relates to her life. It's the Nativity. Then on either side of her, in the upper section, we have episodes from the life of St. John the Evangelist. Here, one of my favourite, the episode of St. Benedict in the wilderness, who becomes tempted by visions of a woman that he's attracted to, and in order to kind of punish himself and banish these thoughts, he rolls around in a thorn bush and kind of delivers this sort of corporal punishment on himself. Down here we have the episode of the beheading of St. Catherine of Alexandria. You can see this kind of gruesome detail where her head has left her body. On either side of the Virgin at the lower register are 2 episodes from the legend of St. Nicholas. And finally this wonderful scene with the enormous dragon, an episode from the life of St. Margaret, where she is eaten by a dragon but miraculously escapes unscathed.
So she's appearing twice, is she, in the scene? Yeah, amazing.
So this kind of image of this very frontal Virgin who really faces the viewer front on is something that we typically associate with the imagery of Byzantium. But in Madonnas from Byzantium, we never see her wearing a crown like this. And the crown itself is really kind of fantastical. It's kind of hybrid. The kind of V shape is associated with very early kind of German crowns, whereas the hanging pearls or jewels are more typically associated with the Byzantine Empire.
I'm just going to lift the painting up a bit so we can have a look at another area. So one of the other areas where we've done an intervention on this painting, that's actually the main part of the painting, is this area here under the Virgin's feet. That bottom edge was completely unoriginal. And we also discovered, it's sort of a bit hidden, but there's actually this marble dais that the Virgin is sat on. And one of the things I really enjoy now is you can really appreciate, the lovely folds of her drapery and also her feet, which have this really iconographical importance, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. The decision by artists at this date and in later centuries to really make the Virgin's foot very prominent is associated with this kind of devotional ritual of kissing the Virgin's foot, which is actually something that comes out of the secular world to do with, you know, kissing the feet of emperors and kings, but is kind of transported in a devotional sense into a kind of sacred realm.
So one of the wonderful things about working on a painting for so long is that you make these discoveries throughout the process of working on it, especially when you're working with curators and scientists as well. And another area where we made this interesting discovery is this narrative scene with St. Nicholas. As you might remember in the infrared image of the painting, you could see these wonderful sea creatures.
Yeah, and so evocative, all different shapes and sizes. Some of them are even eating each other, and it's just an amazing level of detail that's now completely hidden.
So yeah, one of the reasons we thought that might be less visible is because of the use of this more opaque blue pigment, azurite. But through some of the analysis, the phores analysis that the scientists did, we were able to figure out that it's actually indigo pigment. And indigo is a much more transparent or translucent blue pigment. So the implication is actually those creatures would have been more visible at one point. And it's just down to how the materials have degraded and also the restoration that's happened to the painting that they're now unfortunately less visible.
And all of that speaks to the kind of sophistication of this painter, which we'd potentially underestimated, because, you know, he's very carefully chosen this pigment which he knows is more translucent, and then he knows is going to have the effect of a kind of aqueous seascape.
Yes.
And I think this is a kind of theme that we've come back to time and time again about how much more sophisticated Margarito is than we gave him credit for, and that's just through all these opportunities to really examine him, you know, really, really close up using all sorts of different technologies. When this painting was first acquired, it was described as unsightly.
Yes.
And even rude, you know, rude in the sense of being very unsophisticated, and was really introduced into the collection because it was considered to be a specimen of what Western painting looked like before it got good, or before it, you know, developed and became sophisticated. And actually, I think maybe that's our big takeaway, that this is an extremely sophisticated painting which just keeps on giving.
Absolutely. I think in a way somehow that origin of the painting in the collection and how it came here sort of meant it was for a time overlooked a bit, but through this treatment of the frame and the border and small little aspects of the painting, it's given us wonderful insight into, as you say, how sophisticated and complicated it actually is, and we appreciate it so much more now. One of the wonderful things through this treatment is that we've made so many fantastic discoveries about Margarito and his technique.
And helped, as you've mentioned, so much by the scientific department, which is where we are going to go next. So thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you, Laura.
This way. So as the sign on the door behind me indicates, we're now heading into the scientific department. We're going to talk to David Peggy and Helen Howard, senior scientists in the department, about their work on the Margarito.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Helen. Hi, David.
Hi, Laura.
Nice to see you.
You too.
Would you like to come and have a look at
Yes,
the
please.
images?
So we've got some of the images on the screen here that we want you to see.
Great. So, of course, we've just come from the conservation studio and we're seeing the panel in its finished state. But David and Helen have been working throughout the course of the treatment on investigating the panel using various imaging techniques. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit more.
So one of the methods that we've been using to look at the painting is scanning XRF. This method will produce a set of maps, and the maps each are of a particular chemical element. So for example, copper or lead, and these maps can then be associated with the types of pigments used in the course of the paintings. This scanning produced lots of information and lots of the details that we weren't previously able to see. You can see here really clearly this design in a copper-based pigment along the bottom, which previously we hadn't been able to see at all.
Which looks like it's trying to imitate marble, kind of like a veining,
Something
perhaps.
like that, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
The overpaint that was on there and the dirt really obscured it, and it sort of seems strange now that we didn't see it, or it wasn't so obvious when it before cleaning. But I still think that this this pattern is quite a difficult thing to see without the map. You can see it on the surface when you really look closely
Once
at the
you know it's
surface.
there.
Once you know it's
Once you
there,
know it's there.
exactly.
Yeah,
One
exactly.
of those things that once you know it's there, you start to pick up, and that's what this technique's really good at. Sort of isolating particular chemical elements, so associated with particular pigments, and then you really get a sense of, okay, well, what was the artist doing in that particular area? And in fact, we've got some other images we'd like to show you as well. One of the nice things about this one are these little leaf patterns that you see on the top and the border that separates these scenes.
Yeah, so here, these...
And they've almost disappeared, rather like the dais. They had almost disappeared on the visible image. So it's not until you see a map like this and it starts to highlight these areas that you start to go, oh right, wait a minute, you know, what's this, and how's Margarito painted this border? And in fact, it turns out that the more you look at this border, the more complex the sort of pattern, I think it's fair to say, it becomes. So the iron map is quite nice, but my favourite map, if we move to the copper map, from the same scene,
Oh, yeah.
and it's just visually it's stunning. You get a real sense not of the leaves at the end of the border pattern now, but the actual pattern itself. It really highlights that.
The kind of structural trellis.
Exactly, yeah. But something that's not visible is in the dragon. And these, can you see these scales? Or we think they're scales, they could be some sort of modelling, but the paint on the surface is darkened so much now that they're not visible at all. And we've tried, even though we now know these are there, we've looked
Can't
so
see them,
hard
just
and
can't
we
see
just
them.
No.
can't see them. And that could be a number of reasons for that. But now we can sort of get a sense that how Margarito painted this dragon, and the fact that the dragon would have been, you know, quite a bit, you know, now it's quite a flat, unmodelled sort of simple dragon, but it probably would have been quite complex. And then the wonderful outline of the St Margaret there being both eaten and excreted in a copper-based pigment.
Yes.
So we're really getting a sense of all the different pigments, and some that are visible when you look carefully,
When you
others
know,
when
yeah.
you know in the know, and others that really aren't there.
Yeah.
And we can, this technique allows us in a kind of particularly sort of garish way perhaps, but to false, as I said previously, the false colour, and we can start to build up these elemental maps in whatever colour we choose to see where the different pigments have been used. And here was just a nice example of the coppers in green, leads in orange, and irons in a sort of purpley colour, and starting to build up. And you can see when you overlay the elements in this way, how the structure of the dragon, you can see these little the copper-based scales or modelling have been used.
I think the big takeaway is just how intricate Margarito's approach is. The more we discover, the more we see how highly skilled and how highly thought through every individual element of the work was. David and Helen's work will go on, but the work on the frame is finished and the painting will be going back on the wall very soon, and hopefully that means you, the visitors to the gallery, will have the opportunity to come and see for yourself.
How long has this been up for?
A couple of years.
Ah,
Yeah, it's,
just flies by, doesn't it? Right?
yeah, I know. Well, it was kind of all of COVID, I think,
Yeah.
so it was very delayed.
Okay, so I think to start off, we'll just lift it up to the same centre height as these ones either side. Because it's a bit taller, I might want to go a little bit higher. But we'll start there and then just see how you feel.
Great, yeah, thank you. Okay, so today, after a long period in the conservation studio, we are hanging the picture back in the galleries. Here you can see the guys have established the height for the picture, and now they're going to put in the brackets to hang the picture on the wall. I've never noticed how completely not straight the bottom of this frame is.
Oh yeah. How is it?
think it's, yeah,
It
it's,
kind of does
it's,
a little-
it's bowing kind of. I mean, the illusion is that it's riding up at the right, but I think it's level because the verticals look good.
Okay.
What do you think?
Shall I put the spirit level on and just see what?
Yeah, let's have a look. So the job of the curator in these hangs is to ensure that the pictures are shown to their very best advantage, that they're well lit, they're straight on the wall, and also that they exist in kind of harmonious conversation with the other works of art in the room.
I think they look quite good together as well with that spacing. Like it's tight, but it's a nice.
Yeah.